Welcome, everybody, to the HRO Sports Betting Podcast. Coach and T here, and we are recapping week 2. Another successful week for you. Got to give you credit.
That was a good one.
And I'm eating a little crow and paying for a little steak as I
Yes,
did
sir.
lose the roadie bet. South Carolina, the Gamecocks, they failed me.
Just be lucky that I didn't let you bet that game because I had
That's
2
true.
units on that one. So.
That's true. That was a 2-unit bet. You did put that one. You've got that one on record, on film, as it were.
Yeah.
I am also on film looking like a fool believing in the Gamecocks. I actually have to make a slight adjustment, but we'll talk about that a
we'll
little
get into
later on in the podcast. First game we want to talk about, really the game of the week, Alabama versus Texas. We didn't have anything on that, but this is a perfect example of understanding how you have to make adjustments as you move along in the season. My bold prediction of Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State all going undefeated this year still holds true by that late field goal by Alabama. In my impression, I don't downgrade Alabama much going on the road, playing in a hostile environment. And Alabama, surprisingly, I think you threw this stat out at me, T. It's a weird stat, but Alabama playing true road games don't win by much,
In the
if much of it, in the non-conference.
I forget where I saw it. It was on Twitter or something.
Yeah, it's amazing. We saw that one on Twitter, and of course, when it's on Twitter, it's got to be true. But with that, I don't downgrade Alabama much. A little surprised by their lack of offense against Texas. I give a little bump to Texas, actually. You don't want those quote-unquote wins, you lost, but you're looking at it as a moral victory. Bottom line is I got to give Texas a little upgrade. I don't downgrade Alabama much. What were your thoughts on the game?
So I made this Alabama minus 20, so pretty close to the line.
Yeah.
Kicked, the line moved. I think kickoff is 21.5. Early, it started around 18.
Yeah.
With the look-ahead type stuff, or early drops for the lines. Early, before, and I hope I pronounce it, Ewers?
Yeah, before Ewers got hurt.
Texas, the quarterback, before he went down, he looked really good.
Yes, he did.
His first real, action since he was in, a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
So hurt, I think he might have started, as a junior and then got hurt. Then senior year went to Ohio State, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
But he looked good. He looked like one of the best quarterback prospects coming out of high school. 9-12, 134 yards early. Then when Card came in, their backup quarterback, he got dinged. It's a bunch of what ifs. If they stay healthy, does Texas win?
Yeah.
Maybe. Does the ball not bounce off of a defender's helmet to make it a tip pass in the end zone?
Yeah.
For all those people crying safety, it wasn't intentional grounding.
Yeah.
He threw it off the guy's helmet. It sucks. It was a bang play. I'm glad that they picked up the flag for the targeting, and then they misspoke supposedly on the unnecessary roughness. I'm glad that, because otherwise that was a bad call.
Yeah.
End of the day, good teams find ways to win.
Yep.
Alabama found a way to win. As ugly as that may be, as you mentioned, it's still a win in the win column for them, and they move on. But the resilience that Bryce Young showed, I think, was really impressive.
Yeah.
I've got it marked down with 12 and a half minutes to go. He had 77 passing yards.
Yeah.
They held him. The Texas secondary held him to 77 passing yards.
Impressive.
In over 3 quarters.
Yep.
That just doesn't happen to
stat.
Alabama.
Yep.
Now, of course, he finished with over 200 yards, touchdown, and they got the win. But very impressed with the Texas secondary. Thought they played the game of their lives, to be completely honest. It was a bump for Texas in my power rankings. Alabama, I still have as the best team in the country. But that gap is narrowed a little bit as Georgia specifically has looked really good.
They look good, without question. But we didn't have a play on that, just enjoyed the game, and like the rest of the pundits here in Vegas, we thought it was going to be a big blowout. But There was no value on the game, so we didn't bet that one. Moving on to another game that I had a lean on, but we didn't have a play on, that BYU Baylor game at BYU. I like that. I like BYU. I like how physical they play. When they want to, they really get after you, and I give them a lot of credit. It took overtime for this lean to hit, but I think BYU is sneaky good. I like the team. Baylor, on the other hand, I've always kind of downgraded them a little bit in my eyes. Of course, they did win the Big 12 last year, but I don't know that they're at that level this year with the likes of Texas and Oklahoma. So that being said, it was a very good game, very entertaining game. And like I said, BYU pulls it out in overtime to help me make at least look a little bit better with the crow on my face that I'm going to have to talk about in a little bit. What were your thoughts on that BYU Baylor game?
So that game, I made that one 4. BYU -4 at home. And one of the better home field advantages, I feel.
Yeah,
in the
agreed.
BYU, I mean, they've definitely got
a home field advantage. Oh, and by the way, talk about home field advantage. Kids, stay in a stance.
Yeah, you are
the
favorite.
You're the favorite. Why are you rushing the field as a favorite? Okay, beat Alabama and rush the field, for Pete's sake. Stay in a stance. You're not getting on TV. Nobody saw you on the field. Stay in the stance.
Yeah, you're
that's a pet
favorite.
peeve.
I mean,
that's a pet peeve of mine. Don't rush the court. Don't rush the field when you're a favorite. Okay,
agreed.
Moving on. Sorry, pet peeve. Sorry.
I mean, in this one of the things that kind of stuck out, neither team really got anything going on the ground. Baylor ran the ball 52 times for 152 yards.
Yeah.
And when you put that much emphasis into running the football and you're under 3 yards a carry, that hurts.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side, I mean, BYU would have won this game in regulation had they not been pretty bad on third downs.
Yeah.
I've got them 3 for 14 on third downs. I mean, that's just, some of those penalties or stuff like that, because I know Baylor hammered in penalties.
Yeah. But Baylor really, they stiffen up when they have to. I mean, you got to give them credit. They get off the field. That's
it won them a conference title last year.
That's one thing I'm impressed with Baylor is they can't play a little defense. There's no doubt about it. But once again, had no play for either T or I. I had the lean on this one, but it was not. That's not something official. That's not something that we talk about in our win or loss column. But quite honestly, no change for me with how I look at Baylor, BYU. Really, no change for me in how I look at BYU either. I think BYU is easily a top 15, if not a top 10 team in the nation.
I've got them 10th right
now. And you've got them 10. So I mean, it's really, they are exactly, to say those words once again, they are who we thought they were. Sorry for making that quote, chopping that up pretty bad. So with that, we're going to move on to the next game. Our next game is Kentucky at Florida, and this to me was a real defining game for a couple of programs that I had behind South Carolina until I watched Arkansas pounce on South Carolina. Yeah. Now I'm really looking at Kentucky, and this is where, as a handicapper, you've got to make some adjustments. You've got a couple data points now to work with, and Kentucky has impressed me. Florida has impressed me. I don't downgrade Florida for this 10-point loss as much as I give Kentucky a little bit of a bump, and I think who they are and what they bring to the table. It was a hard-fought game. There was good separation. It came in that end of the third quarter, I want to say fourth quarter, when UK came up with the touchdown, and I give them credit. UK went to the swamp, came away with a win. That's not something you can always say about a UK team. And now another team that we aren't going to talk about tonight, but another team that I've got to make some adjustments. I think we are going to talk about them is Tennessee. I look at UK and Tennessee as really vying for that number 2 spot. Bottom line is neither one of these teams are going to get Georgia. I just don't see that happening. But it was a game in which we didn't have a play on, and I wanted to see who was going to come out on top. What were your thoughts in the game?
So this is another one. I made this game 5, opened 4.5, so it was no real play. I did think because it closed 6 at kickoff, Florida was a minus 6. I thought that was a bit of an overreaction from week 1. With
I can
the
see
big
that with
win
the
that they
Richardson
had.
kid.
Yeah, I mean, and Florida, they look good week 1. A little bit different in this situation here against Kentucky. They did not score in the second half.
No.
You're not going to win a lot of SEC football games if you don't put up any points in the second half or
Agreed.
score 16 points in general. You're just not going to win a ton of games.
Agreed.
So I thought that was a little bit of an overreaction. Then talking about Richardson, I mean, and we brought this up a little bit in the past. I mean, he struggled through the air.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
14 of 35 for 140 yards and a couple picks isn't going to get the job done. Kentucky couldn't run the ball either.
Yeah. But
averaging less than 2 yards a carry when you have 38 carries. I mean, that isn't conducive to winning a lot of SEC football games. They just caught Florida when Florida, whatever adjustments were made at halftime, didn't go Florida's way.
Yep, I agree. But once again, we didn't have a play on this, but it is going to affect our power rankings and how we look at teams and as we make those adjustments going in. Because one thing, and you'll find this out about T, does excellent research, excellent work, especially in that preseason and out of season, and it reflects in our win total and how much money we're bringing in early on. Our next game that we want to talk about, unfortunately, and I gotta talk about it right now. This one's on me. I was wrong about South Carolina. You're hearing it here first. I was wrong. T was right. He already ate it. Look at him just smiling over
give me
there.
that first roadie bet.
Yeah, you got the first roadie bet on that one. I will say this. As a handicapper, sometimes you've got to make adjustments on people that you just aren't sold on. And KJ Jefferson's one of them. I did not have him ranked as high as Rattler from South Carolina. I've now made that adjustment. I mean, that's how I looked at it. And sometimes you can't have pride in this business. You can take pride in what you do, but you can't be so prideful that you aren't willing to adjust. And every good handicapper that I know makes these adjustments along the line. And I got to accept it. Sometimes it just goes that way. I thought South Carolina for a minute there looked like they were on the comeback trail.
Yeah, you sent me a text.
And Arkansas just said, nope. And, give Arkansas credit. They not only won, they covered, so it didn't matter if I wanted them outright or the cover.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you talked me out of betting them, and we put down 2 units on them, during the week, and that's what you wanted to do. This was one of your favorite plays. Sometimes you live and learn. I'll shut up now. T, what'd you think about the game?
I think I mentioned this in the preview video. I made this game Arkansas 18. That's why, just from a pure number standpoint, it fit.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, this was a 2-unit play for me. Arkansas was in control the entire time.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, they were. KJ Jefferson was really efficient, 18 of 21. Threw a touchdown pass, ran for another touchdown. Raheem Sanders was dominant on the ground, 24 carries, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Unfortunately, that South Carolina defense didn't live up to what I thought they were either.
And Spencer Rattler looked a little bit better, I thought, than week 1, where he really kind of struggled, but still wasn't great.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned this to you during the game, where it was like at some point, South Carolina kept putting the ball on the ground.
Yeah.
And they kept recovering their own fumbles, and it didn't bite them. They fumbled 5 times in this game.
Yeah.
They fumbled 5 times, and Rattler threw a pick. Now, they only lost 2 of those fumbles.
No.
But it's still 3 turnovers.
Can't
Could have
do
been
it on the
more, which
road.
would have made it even worse.
Can't do it on the road in the SEC.
But, I mean, both these teams put up a ton of yards. I mean, South
Yep.
Carolina put up some yards late when, to be completely honest, I moved this game from one of our main screens to a different screen. I still had the game on, but it was not a focal point after I knew I won the bet.
Yeah, exactly. I give you
But like
credit.
I said, I mean, Arkansas, they were in control this entire game.
Yeah.
I liked them going forward. I've been on the KJ Jefferson train since
I know.
before the season
You
started.
have.
I mentioned that he was one of the more underrated quarterbacks,
Yeah.
and they keep getting wins.
Yeah.
We'll see where they go from here and what action we have on them in the future. But at least for now, I'm going to take this 2 units. I'm going to take my lunch and move on.
We're going to move on, thankfully, to another game that we didn't have a play on. And really, we talked about this last week about App State. You know, they had just came off that game, putting up a 40 spot on North Carolina in the fourth quarter. Anytime you can put up 40 points in a quarter, that's just way impressive. I didn't know how much they'd have, and doggone it, they came out and beat Texas A&M at College Station.
They dominated
Congrats!
Texas A&M.
And they didn't just beat them; they beat them basically in every phase when I was watching.
Yeah.
So, you know, they end up winning the ball game 17-14, and kudos to you folks at App State. You deserve to have game day there this upcoming week. You know, enjoy the time in the limelight, and much appreciated to providing another upset. Congrats. That's all I can say. I did downgrade Texas A&M. This is a little bit of a concern for me, their ability to put up points. You aren't going to beat Alabama scoring 14 points. You're not going to beat a Georgia scoring 14 points. So with that A&M, you know, I've made that adjustment. So they've slid down a little bit. And like I said, they're going to have a heck of a ball game against Arkansas for that number 2 spot over there in the West. T, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, again, this was no play for me.
Yeah.
I did kind of like the under as it started to move. Was kind of hoping it would move a little bit more, because then we probably would have bet it, but we did not bet that under. And as I mentioned, I mean, Texas A&M dominated. I mean, App State had 22 first downs to Texas A&M's 9. App State outgained them 315 to 186. I mean, it was... I mean, A&M, they fumbled 4 times, lost 2.
Yeah.
The whole thing, I mean, King, the Texas A&M quarterback, had 97 yards passing.
That ain't going to cut it.
I mean, and nothing against App State, and I like
No.
App State. I mean, we mentioned this, that they're prone to springing those upsets, and that's just credit to good culture and coaching staff and recruiting, and then the players going out and playing
Believing
hard.
in it. Yeah.
But if you're Texas A&M, you can't
that's a game
lay
you got to
an egg.
win.
Yeah, this in my opinion takes them, depending on what happens, probably out of the college football playoff running. Now, if they beat a Georgia and Alabama, all of a sudden those 2 wins, obviously anybody beats those 2 teams. If you don't lose any other, like, you'll be in that kind of conversation. But yeah, I mean, this isn't as good of a Texas A&M defense, I don't think, as they've had in years past.
Got to run a table now.
Yeah, their offense isn't where it needs to be at this point, even with all their talent. So, well, I mean, we'll see.
You can still win the SEC there, A&M, but you know that's it. You've now got the uphill battle coming at you.
Yeah.
So, that being said, moving on to another game that we had here, Tennessee versus Pittsburgh. A great game. I mean, an overtime win for Tennessee. Kudos to Tennessee. Went into Pittsburgh, got the W. Even though they were favored, you know, I think I kind of leaned Pitt last week. I don't remember it.
We had a play on Pitt last week.
We did have a play on Pitt last week, but in this game, I thought maybe Pitt, getting points at home. It was a lean. I know we didn't put a play on this one, but this is another one where I've now bumped up Tennessee a little bit. Tennessee and Kentucky are vying for that number 2 spot in the SEC East for me now. This is a great win for Tennessee. They are proving that, some of the pundits had them higher up than I had them to begin with. And now I'm making that adjustment, showing that they need to be a top 10 team. T, what were your thoughts? And oh, by the way, Pittsburgh didn't really downgrade for this. This is an overtime loss to, in my opinion, a top 10 team. So Pittsburgh doesn't see much of a downgrade for me. It could hurt Pitt in their opportunity to make the playoffs, just if they would win the ACC. But having this loss, it hurts you in that regard. So what are your thoughts on this one,
This is the game. I made this game Tennessee -5. We did not get to the window on that one. I know we did have the conversation about potentially betting this game under.
No.
But the total moved a touchdown south. So it went from 69.5 to 62.5.
Yeah.
And at that point, we just decided to stay away. And the reason why we liked that under goes back to, again, something that we've talked about in multiple videos so far. This Pittsburgh team is a lot more run-heavy than they have been in years past.
Yeah.
In this game, they were real balanced. They carried the ball 39 times, 141 yards to 44 pass attempts.
Yeah.
When you run the football, the clock is running.
Oh, yeah.
Can lead, especially in games, if you're not busting those big plays.
Yeah.
A running, even a 50-50 balanced team, 70 is a ton of points.
Yeah.
That's the mindset that we had and why we liked that under. Again, that was not a play for us. We did not get to the window on that. But that's kind of where we were at with that one.
Yeah.
Slovis got dinged. When he went down, Patty came in, wasn't very efficient.
Yeah.
9 of 20, 79 yards, did throw a touchdown. Tennessee, I mean, nice little comeback.
Yeah.
Down double digits early to come back, get the win in overtime. That's a nice it's a nice win on the road.
I give, like I said, I give Tennessee credit, slight upgrade for them, and congratulations. Really looking forward to a couple of these Tennessee games here in the future. Our next game that we're going to talk about here is USC versus Stanford. This is a game that we did have a play on, and slowly becoming one of the favorites of T's eye here. USC. I mean, they looked impressive. Lincoln Riley is. I tell you what, Williams can sling it. Not that everybody didn't know that, but I tell you, they can play. And what I like about them right now, even more so than the offense, is the opportunistic defense. When you go back-to-back weeks where you have picks for touchdowns and your defense is opportunistic, that's a recipe for a winning program. Because they can put points on the board. You are going to have to keep up with them, and if you're turning the ball over, you might be giving them a short field. They've had a bunch of pick sixes. There's a lot to like about this USC team right now. They are the West Coast and the Pac-12's hope for a NCAA playoff, or a college football playoff team, I should say. So with that being said, congratulations to Lincoln Riley and the Trojans. You're off to a great start. But, T, what were your thoughts on the game?
So I made this game -16 going into it. We did have the one unit on that. The only reason why I decided on one and not potentially more is the defense they give up some yards.
Yeah.
And they did again.
Yeah.
I mean, Stanford had the ball inside the red zone multiple times where they didn't come up with any points.
Yeah.
Now that plays to the opportunistic defense.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had it 16. Game closed about 9.5.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the video that I would hammer this thing upwards of 10. It didn't quite get to 10. Again, USC, their offense, specifically their ones in the first half, have been unstoppable.
Yeah.
I
don't think have they been stopped.
They
in the
have
first
not
quarter?
been. They have scored, I believe, on every single first half possession, except the one that they had right as the half
Clock
ended
expired.
against Stanford here. and they were scoring touchdowns.
Yeah.
They were not stopped in the first game.
No. And I didn't expect Rice to stop them, but Stanford, yes.
I mean, you're now in a Power 5 opponent. They looked
good,
phenomenal offensively.
Yeah, I give them credit.
They forced 4 turnovers, and as you kind of alluded to, I think if they continue to force turnovers like this, regardless if they keep scoring off of those in defensive touchdowns or not, if they're forcing turnovers like this, USC will be in the playoff.
Oh, by the way, I just want to, this is a public service announcement. Mr. Addison, welcome to the Blitnikoff Award.
Yeah.
You can return to your programming now.
Especially with the kid from Ohio State dinged.
Yeah.
I
kid
mean,
can play.
7 catches, 172 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams, as of right now, I would put as the Heisman favorite.
Yes.
Now, I don't know those odds off the top of my head, but I would put him
like
as the
CJ.
favorite.
CJ is still my favorite to be the number 1 pick overall in the draft, but Caleb Williams, hard to argue. I mean, the young man has looked very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
And then when you look at the defense, brought it up for a second there. I mean, Stanford did have a lot of yards.
Yes.
They had over 440 yards of offense. They had 33 first downs. They just had too many drives that resulted in turnovers or didn't result in points for whatever reason, turnover on downs or anything like that, to keep this game even closer. And I would even say that this scoreboard at the end of the game, 41-28, wasn't, as far as how dominant, USC didn't, I think they had 35 at halftime.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they took the foot off the gas a little bit. But, for me, USC has a couple games. They've got...
they play Utah.
They play Utah. And do they have Washington on the schedule? I don't know. Have to look that one up right off the top of our heads. But, those are going to be the 2 games.
They don't.
Yeah, they don't have Washington until potentially the Pac-12
and they don't play Oregon.
Championship game. So that being said, I do like Washington out there as well. Moving on to another game, I mean, this weekend kind of stung for me personally, being the big Badger fan that I am, but we had action on this Washington State Badger game. I thought the Badgers did everything but scored. I mean, it was frustrating to watch, the inability to put that ball in the end zone. That's about all I can say about that one. They wouldn't have covered the 17. They wouldn't have done that. But now, I mean, in all intents and purposes, when you're a fan of a Power 5 school, but isn't the it school, you can't afford to lose to Washington State and have college football playoff hopes. Badgers can still have a fine season, don't get me wrong, but it did go to show that there's a definite ceiling on what the Badgers can do and how offensive they can be. And with that, what were your impressions of the game there, T?
This line, I did have Wisconsin. I know you said that you don't necessarily bet on the Badgers. And I said I don't have a problem betting on Wisconsin there.
Yeah.
I mean, it really comes down to the Badgers dominated. They had 400 total yards of total offense. They had 120 more yards on the ground. They had more passing yards. They just missed a couple field goals.
Yeah.
One of them was not even close. The other one, I think he just pushed right. They had way too many penalties, 11 for over 100 yards. And when you're a running football team,
can't have it.
You can't.
No. Can't have it.
And the Badgers literally did everything in that game. They dominated in everything except the most important stat, and that's the final score.
No.
So this was an L.
Yep, cost us.
But it is what it is. Each team turned it over multiple times. Yeah. But the Badgers they didn't get it done for us.
Yeah. And, I mean, with that, though, on the week and plays that we had in units, that makes us, 3-1 in units in
college football, in plays that we gave out. Yes.
Yeah, in plays that we gave out in video, and that's what we're going to differentiate that too. You watch us. We put our pride. We put our, our predictions out there for people. I'm not hiding behind anything on Twitter saying I'm 50-0. Woo, follow me. You see it. You see it right here. We're going to be honest with you. We're going to tell you when we win. We're going to tell you when we lose. It's that honesty that gets you cashing tickets at the window and makes you money. And that's what we're out to do. This was a 3-1 unit play, and if you include the NFL, that we didn't have much, and we didn't talk about week 1 much, but we did give out Minnesota, much to my chagrin at the time. Minnesota was plus 2.5 against my Packers, and we liked that game. And we liked it for a variety of reasons. We gave that out on our NFC North preview, making our total this weekend 4-1, video confirmed picks.
Yep.
Right there. So with that, when we talk about our upcoming week in college football, we'll have some more predictions for you coming up with that on the recap. What are some of your thoughts that you got on the weeks and moving forward?
In the plays that we gave out, very successful. I mean, we only had 2 other plays personally that we didn't talk about in the videos. Just going to highlight. I'm not going to get too in depth into those because, I mean, the tickets are already cashed and we didn't talk about it on a video.
Yeah, sometimes you just make these decisions after we record. We record this early in the week.
Yep.
We see something, especially you see something you really like, and you've got a play. You've got a rinse and repeat play here coming up, like I like to say. But go ahead, talk about those.
So some of the other games that we had in week 2, Washington.
Yeah.
We had the Huskies minus 28.5. That was early. The game closed 31.
Yeah.
Their offense is just so efficient that I didn't see.
I like what Penix is doing up there.
Yeah, he's looked good.
He's a good player.
Then for them to not cover the 4 touchdown, I liked Washington.
Yeah.
And then we had the Iowa under.
Yeah.
Now, Iowa lost us money in week 1. That was one of the plays we lost, having them, I think they were minus 10.5.
Almost made me sing my Iowa song.
They, opened 41.5, and we hammered the under for 2 units.
Yeah.
That game had no chance of hitting 41 or 42 to beat us.
And if I may, you're going to hear this in the future. Bet the Iowa under.
Yeah, until there's an adjustment made, or if they're playing a Michigan or Ohio State, then it's a little different.
Against a team that can put 40 on them.
Disclaimer, and we'll talk about this in a future game and preview. Yeah. I've already got money down on the Iowa under for next week. They play Reno.
Yes, we do. Under. And we got 41.5. It's documented. We're putting it right here on tape. 41.5.
Circa when the opening line dropped.
41.5.
But anyway, with their game this past week, it was a rivalry. Yeah. Iowa still has a really strong defense. They have an abysmal offense. And like we said, until it beats me or there's an adjustment made, I'm going to keep betting this because I don't think Iowa is going to, at most against Reno coming up here, 10 in a perfect scenario, Reno gets 10 points. Anyway, so with those other games that we bet that we didn't, and it's not that we wouldn't have given these out in a video. We just, some of these games aren't worth making a video on. So we just get those tickets.
And sometimes we just look at things a little later in the week and we like the game.
Yeah, but it was 2-0 on those plays for 3-0 on units to cap a really successful first weekend in college football second weekend in college football.
Yeah, I agree. So, once again, that's the wrap up on our college football recap show here on the HRO network. We appreciate the folks at HRO for letting us in the studio and talking a little college football with you on the recap. And, we've been pretty successful.
Try to go 3-1 in plays we've given out for the third straight week, hopefully.
Exactly. So with that, hopefully, we're making you a little money out there, and I know we're making a little money in here, so that's always a good thing.
It always feels good to cash tickets.
Exactly. So hopefully you're heading to the window and cashing tickets now. And once again, for Coach and T and the HRO Network, we're signing off. You take care, and we'll see you at the window.
Yep.